violent death of every kind, madness, uncontrolled sexuality, need to go somewhere because they are the part of what it is to be human.
Clive Barker, author of the Books of Blood and creator of the Hellraiser series, is an undisputed titan of terror. His books are a distinct blend of supernatural tension and erotic subversion. Pinhead, the sadomasochistic hell priest, is one of the most iconic villains. Barker also gave us the likes of Candyman, the undead murderer with a chest full of bees, and Quaid, the psychotic torturer in Dread. Fans of low-budget 80s movies will also know Rawhead Rex, the pagan deity who lays waste to the Irish countryside. He addressed the violence in his books and movies in an interview about the controversy surrounding them. He points out that great literature, from Dante to Shakespeare, has always been violent, and it is only natural for a writer to follow in their footsteps. Today, we are going to be looking at some of his favourite books on the subject of good versus evil, number 1 being the novel that inspired him most, and his favourite of all time. Kicking off the list is Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. It is about Marlowe's journey through the Congo and search for Kurtz, a deranged ivory trader. He travels by steamboat, observing sickness and violence among the natives. Their attacks on his vessel grow bloodier as he approaches the obscure Heart of Darkness, where Kurtz is being worshipped like a god. Though his followers believe he has opened his mind, others view him as erratic and paranoid. It isn't long before illness brings him close to death, and he reveals that his mental state is the result of his macabre surroundings. Barker didn't have as much to say about Heart of Darkness as the other books on this list, just the horror. The horror. Need I say more? Next we have Something Wicked This Way Comes. Written by Ray Bradbury, it tells the story of a travelling carnival of creepy figures. Their leader is Mr. Dark, who seems to grant people their desires, while actually living off their life force. Barker read the book at the age of 11, and described it as a beautiful story about coming to terms with the compromises of age. Like many of the books he would later write, it is a merging of horror and fantasy. Another reason he ranked it so highly was it provides a different reading experience depending on your age. It's that rare kind of masterpiece that continues to evolve with its readers. We all know The Wizard of Oz by Frank L. Baum as the story of Dorothy following the yellow brick road to have her wish granted in the Emerald City. What wasn't immediately apparent to me was why it appealed to Clive Barker. He described it as one of those miraculous stories that is both ancient and modern at the same moment. This is also true of Hellraiser, which deals with ancient evils, but gives them the modern twist of sadomasochistic tendencies. Similarly, The Midnight Meat Train shows us demonic entities making use of public transport to commit their atrocities. It is interesting to think of Barker using the world of Oz as an inspiration for his own warped universes. He described the book as a work of pure imagination, and I see this as something he wanted to emulate. In second place, we have the definitive book on good and evil. The Bible has some of the best heroes and villains in all of literature. On one side, we have Moses liberating the slaves, and Christ, the Son of God, born into poverty, who dies for our sins. Some of my favourites on the other side include Pontius Pilate, who personifies how weakness and subordination leads to evil, and Judas, whose treachery is both mysterious and irrational. And of course we have the devil, the benchmark for supernatural villains. Though Barker is rarely explicit about his character's connection to the devil, it is clear that he has studied demonology. Pinhead's master is Leviathan, who is often depicted as one of the devil's lieutenants, and many of his stories, including Pig Blood Blues, deal with possession. He mentions being particularly taken by illustrations from the Bible. The one he grew up with included monochromatic reproductions of Renaissance paintings that changed the way he viewed the world. At number 1, and his choice for the greatest book of all time, we have Moby Dick. He calls it the perfect representation of the ambiguity between good and evil in the animal kingdom, a masterpiece of literature. He often criticised Lovecraft's vagueness when it came to describing his monsters, so must have loved Melville's intense analysis of the monstrous whale. Like much of Barker's work, Moby Dick draws heavily from the Bible and mires the holy and the grotesque. I love the description of whalers sifting through guts as a sacred duty, or comparing themselves to the knights who hunted dragons. I also love the sense of Moby Dick being unstoppable. It lends itself so much more to interpretation than just a whale. It's an unbeatable force, cruelly indifferent. Barker calls it one of the most powerful images in our collective consciousness. He adds that the book marked him deeply, and part of him belongs to it.